What made history's greatest leaders truly great? Not just battles won, not just empires built, but the secret ways they thought, acted, and inspired. And here's why it matters now. Because today, surveys show 84% of leaders admit they feel unprepared for our world's perfect storm. Wars, climate shocks, AI disruption, social fractures. The stage is chaos, and leadership feels in short supply. But guess what? History has seen this all before, and the leaders who thrived left us blueprints, hidden strategies that still work today. So buckle up, because we're about to sneak inside their minds. 7 leaders, 7 strategies, 7 ways the world was changed forever. Here's our journey. We'll start with Caesar's bold gamble, then Elizabeth's game of appearances, Genghis Khan's invisible network, Marie Curie's unbreakable perseverance, Napoleon's tyranny of speed, Lincoln's politics of empathy, and finally, Jesus' fire of inspiration. Picture Rome in chaos, senators bickering, generals backstabbing, the republic crumbling. Julius Caesar has one simple choice: play it safe, or gamble everything. And then comes the Rubicon, a little river in northern Italy. The Senate says, "Don't you dare cross with your army," because crossing means war, civil war. So what does Caesar do? He crosses, no hesitation, no looking back.
The die is cast.
Boom, history rewritten with one bold step. This wasn't recklessness, it was calculation. Caesar knew waiting meant fading into obscurity. Boldness was the only way forward. And here's the crazy part, the gamble worked. His men adored him, the people of Rome cheered him, and his enemies, they were too slow, too divided, too cautious. Of course, boldness comes with a price. Later, the Senate literally stabbed him in the back, 50 times. Talk about negative feedback. But the lesson sticks. Great leadership sometimes means ignoring the rule book, not waiting for permission, not tiptoeing around, but crossing your Rubicon, whatever it is, and daring the world to catch up. England, 16th century. The throne is a dangerous chair. Kings and queens get chopped like firewood. But Elizabeth, she survives, for 45 years. How? Not with brute force, not with armies, with theater, with image, with appearances. She calls herself the Virgin Queen. Not because anyone's really checking, but because the symbol works. Untouchable, pure. Married not to a man, but to England itself. She knew how to play the part. Dressed in dazzling gowns, skin powdered white, jewels glittering like a chandelier. Every portrait, a calculated advertisement. Every speech, a performance. Even her silences screamed power. Behind the curtain, Elizabeth was practical, cautious, even ruthless. But the world only saw the mask, and the mask became the reality. Her enemies, trapped in the same web of appearances. The Spanish Armada sailed against her, and when it failed, she stood in armor before her troops declaring, "I have the heart and stomach of a king." Instant legend, instant unity. Elizabeth's strategy wasn't brute strength, it was persuasion through spectacle. She showed us that sometimes leading is about becoming larger than life, a living myth people can rally behind. And let's be honest, she invented political branding centuries before Twitter. When you think of Genghis Khan, you picture fire, swords, blood, the guy who left half the world in ashes. But here's the twist. His real weapon wasn't destruction, it was information. He built a communication system so fast, so efficient, it was basically the medieval FedEx. Horsemen switching at stations every few miles, messages flying across continents in days instead of months. Enemies couldn't keep up, they didn't even know what hit them, and it wasn't just speed, it was fear. Scouts and spies spread stories about Mongols who drank blood, who couldn't be killed, who appeared out of nowhere. Half the time, cities surrendered before the first arrow was shot. That's not brute force, that's psychological warfare. A network of rumors, spies, and fast horses doing the heavy lifting. And here's the irony. The Mongols, who looked like pure destroyers, actually built the safest trade routes in the world. Merchants loved them, because under the Khan's invisible network you could carry silk from China to Europe without losing your head. So yes, he conquered with fire and steel. But his true genius was invisible. He proved leadership isn't always about muscle. Sometimes it's about knowing more, and making everyone believe you know everything. The first information superhighway, forget Silicon Valley, it was Mongolia in the 1200s. Forget crowns and battlefields for a moment, picture instead a freezing shed in Paris. That was Marie Curie's laboratory. Leaky roof, no proper equipment, toxic dust everywhere, and there she was, stirring cauldrons of pitchblende for hours, day after day, night after night. Most people would have quit after week 1. Marie, she kept going. She had everything stacked against her. She was a woman in a scientific world ruled by men. She was Polish in a Paris that preferred the French elite. And, oh yes, she was handling radioactive materials with no protection. Spoiler, not great for your health. But perseverance was her superpower. She discovered 2 new elements, won not 1 but 2 Nobel Prizes, and basically opened the door to modern physics and medicine. Her leadership wasn't about giving orders. It was about setting an example. Sacrifice. Endurance. The kind that inspires others to follow, even when the road looks impossible. And she proved something crucial. That leadership can happen in silence. No speeches, no armies, just persistence that shouts louder than words. Today, labs around the world stand on the foundations she built, and the myth of Curie isn't just her discoveries, but her refusal to ever give up. Napoleon was obsessed with one thing: tempo. Move faster, strike harder, make the enemy chase shadows while you're already at their throat. His armies could march twice as far in half the time. While his rivals were still debating battle plans, Napoleon's men were already breaking down their doors. Speed was his genius. He split his forces, made them look weak, then, boom, reunited them right where the enemy least expected. Surprise, confusion, panic. It worked again and again, but here's the dark side of speed. It turns into tyranny. His soldiers adored him, sure, but they were also pushed beyond human limits, marching through snow with bleeding feet, living on almost nothing. Because if you couldn't keep up with Napoleon's pace, you were left behind. Period. For years, Europe couldn't handle his tempo. He was always one step, one move, one gamble ahead. Until, of course, the weather and logistics finally slowed him down. Moscow in winter? Not exactly fast lane material. The lesson? Speed creates power, but also fragility. Move too slow, you lose. Move too fast, you burn out. Napoleon lived and died on that razor's edge, and honestly, he'd have been terrifying in a Formula One car. America, 1860s, a nation tearing itself apart, half free, half slave, brother against brother. Lincoln steps in. Tall, awkward, bearded, not exactly the poster boy for charisma, but his secret weapon, empathy. He surrounded himself not with friends, but with rivals. Men who disagreed with him, argued with him, sometimes even hated him. Why? Because he wanted every perspective, every voice on the table. That's leadership by listening. And when he spoke, it wasn't to sound smart, it was to heal. His words were plain, simple, human. The Gettysburg Address? Barely 2 minutes long. But it hit harder than hours of polished speeches. He carried the pain of a divided nation in his own heart, and people felt it. That's why soldiers, workers, even enemies respected him. Because Lincoln didn't lead from a throne, he led from shared suffering. Of course, empathy doesn't shield you from bullets. He paid the ultimate price at Ford's Theater. But the legacy remains. Real leadership isn't about crushing opposition. It's about weaving rivals into something larger. About making people believe unity is possible, even when the world is falling apart. 2,000 years ago, in a dusty corner of the Roman Empire, a carpenter's son starts telling stories. Not laws, not decrees, stories. Parables about seeds, lamps, coins, lost sheep. Simple tales everyone could understand. Farmers, widows, children. And somehow, those little stories lit a fire. They weren't just about God. They were about dignity, forgiveness, hope. Ideas bigger than Rome, bigger than kings, bigger than death itself. Jesus never led an army. He never built a palace. He never held political office. Yet he inspired followers so deeply that even after execution, the movement only grew stronger. How? Inspiration. He gave people something no sword could deliver, meaning. He made them believe they mattered, that their lives had purpose, that love was stronger than fear. That's leadership in its purest form. Not forcing, but calling. Not commanding, but sparking hearts until they carry the flame for you. And whether you see him as divine or as human, the fact remains, one man's words changed billions of lives. No army, no empire, just the fire of inspiration still burning 2 millennia later. So there you have it. Caesar's boldness, Elizabeth's appearances, Genghis Khan's invisible network, Curie's perseverance, Napoleon's speed, Lincoln's empathy, and Jesus' inspiration. 7 leaders, 7 secret strategies, 7 ways to bend history itself. And here's the twist. Right now, most leaders admit they feel unprepared for the crises swirling around us. But these lessons, they show us the path has always been the same. Bold choices, clear words, unshakable perseverance, and a vision worth following. So, what's your Rubicon? What mask will you craft? What fire will you spark? If you enjoyed this dive into the minds of history's greatest leaders, don't forget to subscribe, share, and join us for more. History isn't finished. Stay curious.